used to be a country with Christians and other religions living peacefully with one another. Then along came the Boko Haram, a Muslim group. They've killed thousands of non-Muslims. Recently, they went to a secondary school, killed boys and girls, went to a girls' school and carried girls away in 6 lorries. How can that be justified? Please, can the world hear an answer? Tim, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Gordon. We'll ask Anjem, in order. Lee Rigby, I mean, Alan asked you a couple of times. Yeah. Why are you now reticent if you weren't reticent previously?
I've never changed my stance on what took place in Woolwich with Lee Rigby. I've always said that I'm not in the business of condemnation and condoning. What Michael Adebolajo did, Brother Mujahid, he explained himself in his own words, and he does not believe that there's a covenant of security. And that is a position, in fact, an Islamic position adopted by, for example, the Shabab in Somalia, Al-Qaeda, many people, and it has its own evidence. I differ with the opinion that there is no covenant of security in Britain. I believe that the life and the wealth is protected as long as my life and wealth is protected. That's why I stand. So that would not be allowed for me, but I can understand why people will do it. But rather than fall into the trap of condemnation and condemning, I think what we're doing is we're missing the bigger picture, which is why it took place and why Lee Rigby was targeted and what exactly are the root causes of this, because it's not the first time. We had before that 7/7 and we had before that 9/11. And the sad reality is that many people in Britain and in Europe believe that history began on 9/11. It didn't. Before that, the Americans were supporting the pirate state of Israel. Before that, they bombed Afghanistan and Iraq. Sorry, Afghanistan and Sudan. So it was retaliation. And unless we deal with the root causes, which are the occupation of Muslim land, the support of the tyrants in Muslim countries, the selling of these weapons of mass destruction to tyrants who are using it against their own populations, because the British and Americans, for example, want military and economic interests. Unless we deal with these things, we will continue with the quagmire of violence that we find ourselves in. And I think just pointing the finger at incidents like Woolwich and trying to extract condemnations and making them the be-all and end-all, all we're doing really, all we're doing.
One side, but not the other.
No, but what I'm doing is I'm saying that what are the root causes? And the root causes are not Brother Mujahid. Brother Mujahid is a reaction to what is taking place. And I think that, what we need to do is look at the wider picture. Yes, the Muslim community have a responsibility. The non-Muslim community have a responsibility. The government has a responsibility. Everybody has a responsibility. But unless we look at all those responsibilities together, I don't think we're going to be
condemn the one side. You condemn what, let's say, the West do, and you have a good, strong moral case on that, and I don't think Alan may disagree.
I look at it from an Islamic perspective.
But you will not condemn.
So because I've said to you already that there are Muslims who adopt the Islamic position that there is no covenant of security in the West. So they believe they're in a war, a battlefield, and therefore they believe the soldiers, for example, who are fighting against them. And let's face it, Lee Rigby, for example, he was a drummer, but he was also a gunner, and he was firing machine gun, obviously, at Muslims in Afghanistan. So when people see that, and they see that there's a war taking place, then they believe that that is something, that they can do. And, and you can see that he explained it himself. You don't need me to explain that. What I'm saying is that I made that perfectly clear. I've been on Newsnight and many places. But what I'm saying is that, it doesn't help the argument of Alan or the viewers or anyone to continue to talk about one individual when we're talking about tens of thousands of people who are being slaughtered. I mean, by drones. The Americans are slaughtering, they're bombing weddings and things like that. And why is there no condemnation of that? And therefore, this is the reason why I don't enter into this condemnation or condoning. What I say is let's deal with the root causes. And we're dealing with state terrorism here. And we're dealing with murder on a mass scale, a huge scale. And we're dealing with, when we look at Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay, what happened to so-called freedom and democracy that they're trying to implement in Muslim countries? You see, what happened to all of these principles?
But you condemn that.
Yeah, because it's hypocrisy. The point is that what is taking place...
That's my point. You will condemn one, but you won't condemn 9/11.
The way I look at it is that, if it's like asking why the blacks under apartheid rose up, and they did many things, and some of them could have been agreeable, some of them not agreeable. But you don't say, well, it's their fault, the blacks. But and you miss the point that there's apartheid. You say that they're rising against. So what I'm saying is that there is a system, there's state terrorism taking place. People are reacting to that. Let's look at the bigger picture. Let's deal with the root causes. That's what I say.
Okay. We'll deal with the persecution in Islamic countries after we've heard from Tony in East London, appropriately, because that's where London comes from. And Angie.
Hello, good evening.
You're both from there.
I live there, but I didn't come from...
I'd like to ask Mr. Anand Chaudhary a few things. Number one, is he is he happy that he's in a democratic country like Britain, where he can live off the state and also be a religious cleric, and also throw mark on Christianity when he's basically always in the business of creating more hatred among people and condoning any terrorist act, whatever takes place. He's a leftover of Muhammad Bakri, who has been kicked out. Now, I'd like to ask him, where does Sharia law come from? I'm a Christian, and in John 1:17 it says, the law came through Moses, and grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. Now, God gave the law. No man could fulfill. God's Son, Jesus Christ, he fulfilled it. So there was no more need of any law. Islam is basically a leftover of Judaism and Christianity, a splitting image. And they're so desperate to justify everything, and they have no foundation. Mr. Anand Chaudhary just said there are 55 Muslim countries, and none of them adopt Sharia law. Now, any foolish person can even understand this law cannot be implemented because it is inhuman. Wherever they try to implement Islamic law, there is outcry, public turn against it. They throw away those leaders. What's happening in Egypt now? What he has to say about that?
Okay,
Now,
just let me repeat that. Okay, thanks, Tony. I think we've had a good chunk. Okay, if you, okay, Anjem, just
I mean, there
answer
were two
that.
aspects. One of them was about me personally. Let me just say, obviously, for everyone, I was born in England. In fact, I was born in Hampstead, in North London. I lived there the whole of my life. I didn't come to England to implement the Sharia. I was born there. And I believe that if you believe that something is good for mankind, then it's a very noble thing to share it with other people. Therefore, I believe the Sharia is good for the society in which I live, and therefore I will propagate that. I will continue, I will struggle for that, and hopefully I will die upon that. I will die one day, hopefully seeing the Sharia being implemented. The second thing that he mentioned is something about state benefits. Let me just say that I'm not on whatever they call it nowadays, job seekers allowance. I do something that's between me and my family. You see, so I think I had alluded to it earlier. I mean, I can talk about my own history and my education. I was at medical school. I'm a qualified solicitor, but I don't think it's about my profession. It's about ideas. And I think it's a very, very dangerous path to tread to say, well, okay, we're going to judge someone on the basis of how much salary they have or what they do. Some of the best and most intelligent people are taxi drivers nowadays, and many people on the dole. I know doctors and people, surgeons who are on the dole because they don't have jobs. Yeah, but the point is not that. The point is that if the society in which you live allows you, for example, benefits, within society, it's not prohibited in Islamically to take them. But that doesn't mean that you sell your own ideology. In the time of the Prophet, they used to have a tribal system where they gave money to the tribes. They raided other tribes, they gave money. And the companions of the Prophet said, are we allowed to take the money if we're given it? And the Prophet said, yes, take money if you're given it, but don't lie and don't cheat. And that's where we stand. You see? And I've never been investigated for fraud or anything like that, even when I have or have not been on benefits. That's the whole point. The second thing, that he talks about, the Sharia is not implementable, is quite frankly laughable, because everybody knows it was implemented for over 1,300 years. It's only over the last 89 years, in fact, that we haven't had the Sharia anywhere in the world. And one of the problems is, and there's some truth in what he's saying, that the countries who say that they are implementing the Sharia, for example, Saudi Arabia and Iran, all they do is they implement some of the penal code, but they don't provide the basic needs for the people, they don't give them the education of Islam, they don't deal with the social and economic justice of Islam. So what that in fact does is that it engenders hatred towards them and hatred towards the Sharia. People say, oh, well, that's the Sharia being implemented, but it's not. And the people associate that with the Sharia. They say, oh, well, it's racist and so on. That is the barbaric Saudi regime. And I had a demonstration on Friday, by the way, outside the Saudi embassy, because we condemn it. And we want the Sharia there. We don't want a monarchy system which has nothing to do with Islam whatsoever.
Okay. Most of the questions are being posed to Anjem, but have you got any comments on those points and Anjem's answers?
This insistence on condemning the West for certain things and refusing to condemn what happened to Lee Rigby, I think it shows the sham of where we are and what the sort of sham of what Anjem's putting out there. The trouble is it's evil sham. That's my problem with his religion. As he defines it, I've got to be careful about that, as he defines his religion. The thing's just downright evil, if I'm honest. Why he can't come out and condemn that and say that that should not have been done, I simply don't know. So I just have to say that if you're not willing to condemn that, your religion is evil. That's what I have to say about it. I don't really, I mean, the question being aimed at Anjem. I think I'd like to appeal to the viewers, if I could. We're all three blokes here. We haven't discussed at all about women, the role of women, marriage and all those sort of things. Anjem keeps going on this about this blooming Sharia, I mean, and 1400 years or something, Sharia, absolutely appalling, those countries where they have tried to put Sharia in. And please don't believe for one moment that there were countries in which after that 1400 years there was Sharia. But where it has been applied, it's been appalling. I really would ask people to ask questions about the role of women and what happened about women, and particularly the verse in the Quran about when Muslim men are allowed to beat their wives. Why don't we ask a question about that? Or about marriage, the role between men and women in marriage. All sorts of questions we ought to have, if I may appeal to the viewers to ask them, because I'd love to answer them.
Can I say a couple of things about women?
Yeah.
Because I have a couple of quotes for you, actually. You know, I did my research about the way the women are treated in the West, in fact, because we're talking about the influence of Islam or Christianity and how it could affect. You see, I have here the National Violence Against Women Survey, in fact, conducted, I think, in November 2000. This is one of the examples. Apparently, 25% of women, we're talking about America, obviously, US statistics, and 8% of men say they were raped or physically assaulted by a current or former spouse. That's a quarter of women and 8% of men. And we go on here. Look, the National College Women's Sexual Victimization Study, Fisher 2000, said 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 women at college in America experienced complete or attempted rape during their college years. This is a democracy and Christian society. Let's have a look at another one. We have here a RAIN. This is called the Rape, Abuse and Incest National Network, calculation based on 2000 National Crime Victimization Survey, US Department of Justice. They say every 2 minutes, somewhere in America, someone is sexually assaulted. And we can go on and on. I mean, 1 out of every 6 American women have been the victims of attempted or complete rape, apparently. 1 in 6. I mean, some of these statistics are being rattled off quite quickly, but if you think about it, 1 in 6 women. And I'll just give you one quick quote here. We'll this is Saint Eugene of Hippo. Obviously, a very known Christian in your own history. He said, what is the difference whether it is a wife or a mother? It is still Eve, the temptress, that we must beware of in any woman. I fail to see what use a woman can be to a man if one excludes the function of bearing children. Martin Luther, another famous Christian, if they women become tired or even die, that doesn't matter. Let them die in childbirth. That's why they were there. You see, that's Christians for you.
We'll come back to statistics later. Gordon, back to you in the control.
Well, thanks, Alan. Thanks, Tim, sorry. Alan just raised the whole question of women, and certainly maybe you haven't discussed it yet, but our viewers are writing in, like this one, which says, let's not pretend about the women who've suffered violence at the hands of their men in Islamic countries. That's just a statement with an exclamation mark at the end. You might want to discuss that. A similar one, which says, how many Egyptian women, this is a reference to earlier on the quotes about rape in Egypt, how many Egyptian women suffer genital mutilation because of a way of life? They don't have choice in that. Someone else has written in and said, with regards to women being respected in Islam, we're told in the Quran that they are held lower than a white dog, but higher than a black one. And we could go on. People are writing in about the statistics that were given earlier on about rape, and they're saying that may be the case, but in so many countries, people don't have the right to express themselves and to share what's been happened. And so they don't think it's possible to compare statistics. Lots more emails, but there are a few things on the role of women.
Okay, thank you very much, Gordon. Yes, I would just sort of pitch in. Go on, Alan, because you haven't had much of a shout. Go on.
A debate going on between you and...
Pick up on what Gordon said.
I mean, I think this whole thing about women is key. I mean, Anjem Chowdhury quotes all these statistics and he takes them from the States and from Britain. The facts are that these facts are out there. Why? Because we're open democracies and people insist on knowing the truth. Go to a closed society, go to Saudi Arabia, go to Pakistan, go to any of the Muslim countries. It's not that rapes don't take place, we don't know how many they are. We don't know if it's higher than the West or lower than the West or anything else. It was interesting, if I can just anecdotally raise the question of Nigeria, and I'd like to come back to Nigeria. I've been to Nigeria a number of times, northern Nigeria. But I was talking to a Nigerian the other day and just talking about sexual behaviour. In the northern Nigeria, there are 12 Sharia states.